Here at the foot of Pikes Peak lies beautiful Colorado Springs, home of the Alexander Film Company.
The Alexander Film Company were actually making aircraft when they started out in Denver. And then there was an industrial accident at one of their plants in Littleton where several people were killed. And they kind of had to leave town, and they moved down to Colorado Springs. They continued to make aircraft. In fact, Eagle Rock is a famous airplane you can still see in DIA. But they got out of the aircraft business and they focused on doing the theatrical advertising. They used their airplanes early on to fly to these small little communities and say, hey, we're going to take your local business and do an advertisement and put it into your theatrical film. It's another way for you to make money with your movie theater. And that kind of caught on, so they were the company to do that. At one time, the Alexander Film Company was the largest employer in Colorado Springs. They had over 800 employees. They had offices in New York City, they had offices in Chicago, and they worked with all the major Fortune 500 companies. They would wine and dine people. They'd have them come to Colorado Springs, put them up at the Broadmoor Hotel, and people loved coming out to the mountains, and they really had something to sell by bringing them to Colorado. They worked with the major three automakers at the time, which were Ford, General Motors, and the Chrysler Corporation. They worked with the major soft drink companies. Some of the commercials that were done for Pepsi, for Coke, they were shot here in Colorado Springs.
Coca-Cola brightens any moment in the day.
What really is unique about the Alexander Film Company that people don't know is that in Colorado Springs, they created television advertising. Now this is before television, of course, because they were doing theatrical advertising in the movie theaters, but they created the format of visual advertising, and which you watch today. You watch the series Mad Men, and of course they're dealing with television commercials. They created that industry. We can curse people because commercials break up our viewing, but they pay for it. They pay for the television. They pay for the production. Advertising has paid for it, since the beginning. And the Alexander brothers were the ones that originally came up with that concept and made it work and made a thriving company. You come up with an advertising concept. Couldn't get away with it today, but let's put a car on top of a mountain peak. And that's what they decided to do. And I think it was Pinnacle Rock in Moab, Utah is what they selected. So they took a helicopter and they brought the car to the top of the peak. This is before CGI, so they actually did it. When you see the commercial, it's a beautiful young model in this Chevrolet, and they're introducing, I think, the 1964 Chevrolet, the new Chevrolet, the top of its class, and that's why they put it on top of this rock. It's a pretty spectacular commercial. From what I understand, when it was released, it was featured on Bonanza, which was the biggest show on television at the time. I think on a Sunday night, it was like a 2-minute commercial. So, and it won a bunch of awards. So it was really, big concept. It was an ad agency out of New York that put it together, and then the Alexander Film Company were the ones that shot it. One of the reasons why they did select the Alexander Film Company is this was, before Steadicam. They had designed their own hydraulic mount for the helicopter, and that was one of the things that they sold, is the fact that they could do these helicopter shots. And I just want people to know that this really was a significant company. Even though it's Colorado Springs, it's not New York, it's not Chicago. The impact that the Alexander Film Company had on television advertising and that industry is immense. I mean, they created it. They're the ones that designed the idea, designed the concept, and they've been doing this, since the early 20s. So, this is really unusual to have a company in Colorado Springs, create this industry, and they don't get the publicity that they should. They don't get the credit. Everybody thinks New York, everybody thinks Chicago, but it was, it started here in Colorado Springs. This is where it all began. Not many communities have had an actual film production company in their community where several people have, photographed the history of Colorado Springs in film from, almost the time that film began, and from the time the Alexander Film Company opened its doors in Colorado Springs. The Alexander Film Company would comp the Chamber of Commerce and do several films for them in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, and it's kind of like a time capsule when you look at them, what Colorado Springs was like, what they were selling. It's almost like the home movies of Colorado Springs when you go through that collection. I don't think there's a community in the country that's history is documented on film like Colorado Springs. And the reason for it is because the Alexander Film Company and its employees were here shooting movies, and they were around to capture the history of the city.